Welcome to And It's Live, the podcast which dives deep into football's most iconic seasons, stories, and what ifs. If you love football, history, tactics, and nostalgia, make sure to subscribe, hit the bell, and drop us a like on YouTube so you don't miss an episode. Hello and welcome to part 2 of the main event 08-09, our next step in the history of the Champions League. We went into great depth on a moment that shaped modern football history, the appointment of Pep Guardiola at Barcelona ahead of Jose Mourinho, and we need to wrap up 5 of the other groups in this year's Champions League. To do that with me, as ever, is Mr. David Edgar. How are we doing, David?
Yeah, I really enjoyed last week's episode, and it did go a lot deeper than we thought, but there was a lot to talk about. So yeah, but we'll try and keep on track this week.
Oh, as listeners tell me that they're plenty happy to just sit back, relax, and think of England. How are we doing, Adam?
Good, thank you. Yeah, that's not wouldn't quite class it as going off in one last week, but not so much about Barcelona in the group stages and more about Barcelona itself. But yeah, we'll rein it back in.
I mean, you did bring your own lectern and a kind of roll neck top to do it, but you're more relaxed this week. But
the slideshow said, "And this is me at the Gaudi Museum."
Yeah. Group D, our old friends Liverpool. They just so in sync with this competition, and they topped it pretty easily. PSV Eindhoven, who have impressed in recent years, rock bottom. Marseille didn't do much better, with just 4 points ahead of Eindhoven's 3, and Atletico Madrid, Adam, just lost out in top spot to Liverpool. 2 1-1 draws in the middle back-to-back section of this group, and you were saying, watching those back, that you quite enjoyed them.
Yeah, I don't know why I was watching Liverpool 1, Atletico Madrid 1. Well, for research of this podcast, I guess that would be a good reason. But yeah, I just thought it was quite good. I think this Atletico Madrid team were a bit of a precursor, I guess, to what we see now. A little bit. Javier Aguirre, I don't know how you say that. Aguirre was the manager at this time. He was quite a interesting coach. He was a Mexico manager, and before this, I think, for a couple of years, and then after this as well. So we spoke again, it's quite relevant. We spoke about maybe jumping back and forwards from international to club football. Here's a guy who's jumped back and forwards from continent as well. Something that we said probably didn't work very well with Scolari. So yeah, they were an interesting team at this point. They obviously had Diego Forlan here on his, what's the word, renaissance, shall we say, from his travails at Manchester United. He is their key player this year. I think he scores a ridiculous amount of goals, 32, I think it was, league goals. Gets the Pichichi quite comfortably. I don't think anybody had beaten that for a while. Just a really solid team. Lots of guys in there that you think, yep, Johnny Heitinga, Ufalusi, the Czech centre half, who I really like. Gregory Coupé has made his way here from his time at Lyon. He'd only last one season, not a very good season, and back to France. Maxi Rodriguez, another one that I really liked. Ever Banega was also a player who had a bit of success at Valencia after this, but he was at Atletico Madrid for this season. So yeah, really good mix. A lot of dynamism up top. Luis Garcia, after his spell at Liverpool, is in here as well. A very, very, very young Sergio Agüero as well, who had joined, I think, the year before, and just basically took to Madrid life like a duck to water. So yeah, really nice balance to this team, and I thought this one each was particularly good. It was maybe one of those that you'd like, Martin. It looks boring to everybody else in the world, but engrossing, shall we say. I just thought they did quite well. Liverpool probably should have won it. I think Robbie Keane's goal might have been ruled out in the VAR world, but then Simao pops up late on to get a draw. I thought it was one of those like, Liverpool were into it in the first half, and then the second half Madrid come back into it, and it was pretty good. Yeah, so I think that despite it being a 1-1, like I said, that was a game that sort of stuck out at me when I was watching some. I think the sort of Atletico Madrid precursor and that decent team that they've got there was probably a big reason for it.
Yeah,
the Forlan thing. So the Forlan thing is interesting, Adam. 32 league goals is huge, right? Doesn't score in this group stage anyway. He scores in the Champions League a bit later on, but it's again maybe shows you that it's a different competition. It calls for different things, and maybe his ability, his qualities can outside of just goal scoring, bringing other players into the game or whatever.
Yeah, it's maybe getting more. It'll be interesting to see what David thinks about that. But I guess it's maybe getting more like. Well, is it getting more like the Premier League, or is the Premier League getting more like the Champions League at this point? It's I don't know how you would say it. He obviously struggled really badly at Man United, but is that because he wasn't used to being the main man? And then when he went to, he goes to Spain, and it's ridiculous. I think in his six seasons that he's back there, he gets 25 goals, 13 goals, 21 goals, 23 goals, 35 and 28 in his first 6 seasons back. It's an incredible amount of goals at teams that are doing quite well, but they're not Barcelona, the main. They're not the main guys in the league. He's becoming the main man in the team, but maybe it is just that second tier pressure.
No, that's it, Adam. He's becoming the main man in his team. He's a very good player, but he's not good enough for Manchester United to build his team around in this era. He'd be more than good enough for Manchester United to build their team around in this one. But at Villarreal, they would do that at this early incarnation of Atletico Madrid and what they're going to become, get back to, whatever you want to say it. He's the main man. Griezmann does a similar role, doesn't he, for Atletico now? Absolute superstar for them domestically, and at the heart of pretty much everything good that they've done, but not always the most effective Champions League player. In terms of numbers, he's always, because of the role he plays, Griezmann, he's always important. And yeah, I think there are similarities there. I really do. Some players just suit a particular league, a style of play. And then you are having to adapt, aren't you, when you go into the Champions League? You will meet different styles of football, probably more so then than you do now, because there's a lot of shared ambition and playing style these days. But you get different things. You're refereed differently as well. But also, I think in one-off matches, remember there's 2 matches here against Liverpool, you might be handed a completely different tactical thing from what you're going to be handed in 34 league matches in Spain. The manager may have a very specific task he wants you to do, and they are seconds away at Anfield from a victory, and it takes a penalty from Gerrard to get Liverpool a point. I agree with you. I think he is a second-tier headliner. Does that make sense?
Yeah, definitely. Yep.
Right, yeah. I think at a club just below the elite, he's the main man, and he's great at it. I think an elite club, no.
I think I'm interested to get your point on this, Martin, because just as we were talking there, I think I'm quite guilty sometimes of trying to find a definitive thing, like trying to say, oh well, that happened because of this. I've just done it there, basically. Like he couldn't play at a big club and he's came down a level. It can be as simple as, newsflash, a 21-year-old isn't as good as a 28-year-old, or they're not as sure of themselves. They've not got the experience, etc. It's entirely possible that if that had been reversed and Diego Forlan went to Atletico Madrid first when he came from Independiente, and was that sort of second tier guy. Then goes to Man United, 2008-ish, particularly given the 2008 vintage of Man United. I guess it's entirely possible he would have just been more successful because he was a different player. I think we sometimes need, like I said, I'm bad for it, finding the reason and finding the explanation. Players can get better, players can get worse, players get older, players mature. It's not always logical.
I couldn't agree more. I mean, it's always a combination.
Yeah.
But the Diego Forlan, still the Diego Forlan of Uruguay, when Uruguay had a more dangerous and competitive team at tournaments around this time, really. And that's where people kind of laughed, or when Atletico starting to come to the fore and say, well, you know, he was bombed out of England too early, blah, blah, blah. You're absolutely right. It's the age and just the style of the league at that age, maybe, and his physicality later in his career might have been far more suited to the Premier League than when he was first asked to do that job. And it's comfort, it's confidence. I think that I think it's less so the being the main man thing. I think it's the league. I think it's the setup. I think it's the confidence in his own abilities at that age and what he can do. And the fact that he went back to Spain, as you've mentioned there, and hits the ground running again means that it's that environment in which he feels comfortable, and a more mature Diego Forlan in England, especially at the time he became more mature, I think would have been very interesting. Probably not Manchester United because of what they had. Maybe at Liverpool, actually, or Chelsea, perhaps. That would be fascinating, actually.
And he was playing with Van Nistelrooy, who was a very single-minded striker.
Yeah, and the main man.
Yeah, and the main man. Agüero is a different type of striker, for example. Even, you know, he's not as great as he's going to become, but he was more of a link player. He's more someone who's going to get involved in the play with you. Whereas you're right, if I remember correctly, he mostly played instead of or out on the wing when he was at United, because, as you say, Martyn, we've got this goal machine in the middle. We don't need to, you know, do anything else. So maybe it's, yeah. And also, come from South America, you go to Manchester, it rains every day. It gets us down. So why do we always assume it doesn't do the same for footballers?
I think Uruguay can get chilly, but I thought it was the wrong time, Adam. I think that's pretty much it. But they were, and because Spain has this, well, old firm, I suppose, it is nice when Valencia or Atletico Madrid or Villarreal or even Depor. It's hard to get too emotional, but Depor, just not that kind of club, or City or whatever. Sevilla, it is of interest to the couch potatoes like me, just absorbing it all from a safe distance. But Liverpool top and Atletico second. And we talked about Manchester United there. That's where we go to now in Group E. Champions of Europe, of course. Champions of England, very much in the groove. Davey, will come to you because they have these three players who look fantastic. They have been brilliant. As I said, they won the Champions League, won the league. Euro 2008 dominated by talk that Cristiano Ronaldo is going to leave. He's going to go to Real Madrid. And I think basically had to end that as soon as possible and say, no, he's staying. He's not going anywhere.
I wouldn't sell them a virus, I believe.
Yeah, which is the most ridiculous. It's wrong. If you hated a club, you would sell them a virus because they would be harmed by opening that virus. It's the most typical, just Ferguson fury that his words just don't make any sense. He just like, you know, we're West of Scotland guys. Yeah, that's my dad when he's in a rage. He just he thinks that's clever, but it's absolutely not clever at all. But so he stays. Does he really want to be there? I think his performances, perhaps in the league, sometimes we might have Rob on a later stage to talk about this particular season. I know that he feels that Ronaldo phoned it in at times, I think, domestically. he will turn up here, especially in the knockout games. I think it's fair to say. But this is hanging over, and Ferguson, David, goes out and spends a lot of money.
Yes.
On Dimitar Berbatov, which was not to Carlos Tevez's liking.
No, it was not. And not only a lot of money, it was a deal from Tottenham, which is not fun for a club.
No.
So they must have really wanted him, because you're dealing with Daniel Levy, and he will be very performative before a sale. So he can go to the Tottenham fans, look, we tried our best, etc., etc. Sometimes I think to his detriment. I think he's bought into that image a little bit. But I loved Dimitar Berbatov. I adored the way he played football. And again, he was slightly different. And it was an interesting buy for me, because that United front three were very hardworking, and the constant movement. And you're bringing in somebody who's different, who's louche, has an amazing touch, and brilliant in and around the box in terms of if you want to make little intricate moves. And again, it's that different thing. But Tevez felt it was a slight. And I think we know from Carlos Tevez's career, he could be a little emotional in his decision-making at times. The old cliche about you don't want to, that's part of his game. He's a personality player. He plays that way as well. But no, he was not happy at all. And they have a slightly weird group stage, actually. Unbeaten, but 4 draws in this group stage, United. They're never in any trouble, because, and it's nice as a Rangers fan being able to say this, because this is not a vintage Celtic side. So they're not pulling up any trees. You've got Aalborg, not a great Danish side either, although they do get a draw with Manchester United at Old Trafford. United, I think, early doors clinch qualification pretty much, and then just sort of ease their way through it. But Adam, I'm interested, because that United side, it's got 4-3-3. He's tactically adept, much more tactically adept now, Ferguson, than he was in his early years. They have the ability. They've got their Park Ji-sungs and their Fletchers and stuff, their workhorses in the middle of the park. But they did have the front three who could all play any of the 3 positions, who could interchange, and did so rapidly. Then you bring in Berbatov, different type of striker, still very effective, technically able to play at this, but it is different. How does that fit? How does that work?
I think that comes down to everything we spoke about on last week's show, in terms of people that know they need another option and people that know how to use that other option. And I think Ferguson sums that up, because, you've got Ronaldo, Rooney, Tevez all buzzing about. None of them, with the exception, maybe not even Rooney at this stage, none of them are what you would class as a ball player or a technical player that can bring the ball in, back to goal, silky, cut passes through. They can all do it, but it's maybe not their natural thing.
They won't stay there to do it. None of these 3 will stay there. They can all do it, you're right, but none of the 3 will stay within the 18-yard box, or the width of the 18-yard box, because they want to get involved in the play.
Energy, so there's a time and a place for that. We've mentioned how flexible and how fluid that team is, but there's also a time and a place for somebody who's going to bring the ball in that far up, back to goal, put in a worldie or two. It's similar, I guess, to the Kanta signing, maybe in that sense, in terms of not the stature or the impact or how it defines things, but just that maybe just a little bit of maverick there. I'm interested in whether or not, when we get Rob on, what this season means in terms of Ferguson and sort of moving forwards, because this is the last season. We've mentioned it before, but the last couple of years of recruitment have been, to me, very pointed, and it's worked. There's been a big player coming in every year, more or less. Carrick comes in. Vidic before that. I can't remember who was the year before this one, but there was one who came in, and then Berbatov comes in this year. But not much else is being done, or not much else comes in that really makes an impact. So it's almost like he's taking the time to be very, very pointed with recruitment over a couple of years to say, here is a thing I need, or here's an evolution that I want to give the team. And it's less, let's give me a Galactico every year, but it's, can you give me a centre half? Can you give me a midfielder that can finally control the tempo of a game? Can you give me these forwards that are going to take us on to the next level? But after this year, it goes the opposite way. And because he finishes up in a couple of years' time anyway, that sort of ends there. But the legacy of that, in terms of the squad that he leaves behind, because he's been that guy that just gets every ounce out of the players, he can get away with probably having inferior players, if you want to call it that, or moulding them together into a more efficient team. But by the time he leaves, what's there? The next couple of years, it's very heavy on youth. You've got, I think, Antonio Valencia comes in. I'm not sure he's mega young at this stage, but then you've got guys like De Gea coming in, and we're going with a 20-year-old goalkeeper as the Manchester United goalkeeper, and it feels like there's a shift. So I don't know if there's an obvious answer there, but it certainly feels like this Berbatov one is not the crown and glory, but you know what I mean. But this is an experienced signing to come in and hit the ground running, and it's a sort of win now mentality that, as probably counterproductive as it sounds, a sort of win now thing, but they were sort of building towards with those big signings. So yeah, it's an interesting one, but I think the Berbatov piece was just that option, like we said, just a ball of energy everywhere. Such a great defence. They don't concede very many goals this year in the Champions League at all. Really, really, really solid and just electric in attack. But then those varying options as well with Berbatov, I think, just makes them a really strong proposition. And I think it's a great matchup for the final, which we'll come on to. I think that's a really intriguing prospect, or it is before.
Given how Tevez responded, a huff basically, I think he scored about 5 league goals that season. Maybe Ferguson had that in his head, that great to have when he's on form as he has been, but how long do you have a focused, happy Carlos Tevez? Yeah. This boy at Spurs is just class, gives us something a wee bit different. And also, we will speak when we get to the final, or our final episodes of the semis and the final, because I think Rob and I disagree slightly on Ferguson's approach to it. But I think, he's won 2. Both have been spawny. Injury time goals, penalty shootout because someone slipped effectively. I think there's something here that, we're going to win this again, and it's going to be the definitive Manchester United Champions League win with class and style and panache. And I think the comments after the semi-final, which we will come to, I remember viscerally remember watching, going, oh, that's foolish. You're very good as a counter-attacking team. Very effective. I'm not entirely sure you can go toe to toe, but maybe that's in the mind. David said, kind of again, Manchester United with an easy. You get easy groups. I mean, Barcelona have won, but certainly the joke around this time was that United never ever got tough Champions League groups. By this point, as we've documented on the show, their earlier ones have been plenty difficult. But yeah, Villarreal went up with them, and yeah, it looks like everything is ticking on and going to be fine. Group F then, your old friends Bayern Munich, Adam. No bother, undefeated, 4 wins, 2 draws. Lyon, of course, go through with them. Fiorentina into the UEFA Cup, and Steaua Bucharest, the other Romanian team, propping them up. I know you don't love talking too much about Bayern. But I do find them interesting. They're going to feature next season, obviously, as they're in that Champions League final. Them and Inter going for a treble that night. Lots of goals in this team. They're clearly building towards that, but maybe not by design. Jurgen Klinsmann is there at the start of that season, doesn't last. Their old pal Jupp Heynckes comes back to effectively do them a turn, basically to get Champions League qualification, which would be quite handy because, as I said, they're going to go to that final. But what's happening over there at this moment?
Yeah, we're 1 year away from Arjen Robben signing, and then I'll absolutely wax lyrical about them for as many years as you would like. Yeah, the wee bit of a changing of the guard, you could say, with Oliver Kahn retiring and Otmar Hitzfeld moving on. Klinsmann, I think, does okay, and they don't win the league, therefore he probably doesn't do okay. But yeah, I think they're doing all right. Interesting that what they then do in the summer. I don't think I would really have predicted when with Van Gaal coming in summer 2009. But yeah, I think they are in one of these periods, I guess, that they find themselves in from time to time. It's different to Barcelona, I guess, because they're never really in the crisis that only comes when you're second in a 2-team league and the other team are doing quite well. Never really applicable for Bayern. They can be first, or they can be first in a good way, or they can be first in a bad way. I think usually is probably the way that their fans would split that up. They do have some interesting players at this point. Ribéry, I think we might have mentioned on a previous show, is obviously there just now. I always felt like that was a bit of an underrated signing by them, and he would be there for well over a decade. Players there as well that, again, you think only look good in certain areas. I just never got Martyn Demichelis. He was never one for me. He's there at this point. He bounces about, makes his way to Man City for a bit pre Guardiola. So yeah, you got these guys, I guess. Schweinsteiger coming into his peak. Podolski's there as well. A young Thomas Müller. I think this might actually be Thomas Müller's debut season. I'm not sure how big an impact he would have on it. So it sort of feels a little bit for me with Bayern that they are, again, easy in hindsight, isn't it? Because again, we just have in our heads, similar to the Barcelona and Guardiola thing, that everything just happened in 2008, and there you go. In my head, I sort of think, remember Germany exploding onto World Cup 2010 with Ozil and Neuer and Müller. We've already established on this show that Neuer was kicking about for a while before that. So in my head, it sort of feels like a bit of a holding period. David, does that make sense? Before the big explosion, but Bayern are relentless anyway. Yeah.
We're 6 years into Dash reboot. The humiliation of Euro 2000 following up with that 5-1, which I'm sure Martyn still celebrates once a year.
1st of September.
Michael Owen Day, yep. And there is this group who are going to come through and really come prominence in 2010 and, of course, win the World Cup in 2014, but they achieve a hell of a lot in between that. But you're right, it just... in hindsight, we always go, and then they lost to England, and they put these things in process, and then everything went smoothly. Well, it doesn't go smoothly because Martin's just explained they've gone out and changed their manager, and they looked a little lost. They're not going to Jupp Heynckes because everything's great. Jupp Heynckes is there. He lives in a box at Bayern. They break in case of emergency. So things are not going well. And again, in hindsight, Thomas Müller, one of my favourite players of the last 2 decades, and if he isn't one of yours, then I don't think we can be friends. But he, who knew then? You don't know this season that he's going to be what he becomes. You knew he was talented, but they had a lot of talented players. There's still guys like Zé Roberto, for example, are carrying a lot of the thing. Yeah, Adam's point there about hindsight, where we put everything into a nice linear story, and it's because it ended here, this is how it must have got here. It doesn't work like that. There's still coincidences and there's still decisions and things happening to get you to that position. I'd love a football club that said we sat down and we said we were going to do this and hire him, and it all went from there. But it doesn't often work out. And yeah, I think Adam's absolutely spot on there.
That's one of those things I would pay great money for. I've said this a few times. I'd love to see an elite club's plan for a transfer window. It's slightly similar to what you said there, but I'd love to see the plan. I'd love somebody to sit me down and say, here's a plan. When the transfer window opened on the 15th of June, here's the plan. Here's the list. Here's the positions we wanted to strengthen. Here's the top 3 guys in each position. And I'd love some sort of documentary series about how that went. What did that plan look like on the 1st of September? I think that would be incredible. Nobody's ever going to do it. But I just think it'd be amazing. You'd say, right, I want these 5 players, and how close did you get? Even like the last couple of hours of the window, who appears at the last minute? And you think, fuck it, I'll just grab him. It's 23 in the garage and a Thursday night. Let's go.
Give you a recent example. I don't think at the end of last season, Mikel Arteta, as he's walking down the stairs, says to his head of recruitment, "Get me Raheem Sterling."
Yeah, exactly. And they'll blow it all up and they'll say, "Oh, he's got these qualities and this and that." Show me the list. Show me where he is on your list. I would just kill for it. I think with Bayern, then, just to sort of go back to that point, Martyn, Klinsmann was okay, I guess. Maybe one-dimensional. It was a pretty basic structure, just based on they had Philip Lahm, they had Ribery.
He's a vibes man, Adam. He's a vibes man.
Big time
he's
vibes.
Not a good coach.
He's so Californian. It's untrue. And
we see what happens to his vibes
as well. Yeah.
We see what happens to his vibes against Barcelona in the knockouts. But yeah, I think you're spot on. But he did okay. He did okay, I guess, at that point. Maybe that is, again, we spoke about it before, when you're moving on from something. Hitsfield had loads of success there. The next guy doesn't always just appear. There always has to be a guy before the guy. And I think, again, getting ahead of ourselves a little bit, but I think probably a big part of the reason for Guardiola's struggles in that first season when he goes to Bayern is, unfortunately, the guy before the guy, in this case, dominates and wins them a treble, and Guardiola turns up on the first day of training and he's like, oh, fuck. So I just need to do that again to be par. So it can be quite tricky.
Just a couple of questions about other teams that go quickly, Davey. Fiorentina will do well next season, pretty badly here. But, Italy have got 3 out of 4 teams qualified relatively comfortably. Where is everything in 2008-9, given the tremors of 2006 is kind of still being felt? They must have been kind of looking about, going, all right, we're through this, we've survived it, and we'll continue to march on. And certainly the following summer wouldn't put a dent in that belief.
No, there was still a feeling that, as you mentioned there, Jose Mourinho's there, we can attract these players. There's a realization that they don't have the financial muscle of the EPL, and a lot of the clubs are still paying for the last days of Rome, to use a phrase that I think is probably opposite here, of about 98 to 2002, when they were spending like there was no tomorrow. And this is the thing, people blame the EPL for inflating transfer fees, Martyn.
No,
Serie A at the end of the century were the league that did that, as they strove to sort of assert their dominance. I actually think that they are now where they are 15 years later, which is they're a top 5 league, but no one would suggest that they have the strength of either the EPL or La Liga. I think that there's a sense that their teams can, you will occasionally have a side that do well. And even in this, the last 10 years, we've had Juventus reach a final, Inter have also reached a final, neither won it, of course. And yeah, I think this is the sort of settled in now into we're above France and in competition with Germany. They don't have, at this point, a definitive club the way they will have in the next 10 years with that Juventus side that Conte starts off that win the league every year. So they don't have that. But I think that because of the ructions of the past 3 years, at this point they're saying, right, we've got ourselves to a nice position and now it's the next step. The next step has never been taken. Now, interestingly, as we record in 2025, the Italians, there is an insularity to it, and it's a good thing and a bad thing. The good thing is they take their championship very, very seriously. It's important. Teams want to win the Scudetto. The counter to that is that you can get that slightly parochial thing of, well, it doesn't matter if we're not doing well in the Champions League because, look, we're winning the Scudetto. That's never healthy, I think. I think you need to be ambitious to do both. But when it becomes difficult to do that, then it's easier to say, well, we could do better in the Champions League, but we've got such a competitive title race that we need to focus on that. I think it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy.
I completely agree. Adam, just a very quick one on Lyon, right in the middle of this, 9-year stretch of always qualifying out the group, not doing overly much in the knockouts, but this level of churn, of just absolute consistency, without glittering success. I'm not sure there's a club in the history that we've gone through that kind of matches that. That absolute middle of the road, middle lane kind of approach to the Champions League. They're always there in the spring. Won't pull up many trees, but they'll be there.
Yeah, and again, it'd be interesting. It'll be something that we can delve into on a later show when they do start that decline. Because I wonder what the goal was. Because this is kind of still before the big chasm in terms of finances between
Paris,
the Premier League and everyone else, I guess, but they're not a club that has to rely on selling all their players. They do because of just the way that the things are moving. But you just wonder if, as we have spoken about before, in terms of Wenger getting to 4th place becomes everything, really, because it then keeps your fortunes there. But I just wonder what their aim was. If their aim was just to be the dominant club in domestic football, and then the Champions League was just the money that allowed them to continue doing that, then fair enough. But there maybe are one of those clubs that you would think, could they have given it more of a go, but could they have pushed the boat out a little bit more, shall we say, in there, because they had a relatively deep squad. They had a settled squad at times as well. Kim Kallstrom was one who obviously was a massive football manager, 2001, 2002 guy, but he's there pretty much throughout this period. I think he ends up making about 300 appearances for them. Even guys like Janino as well, which you've just nailed there, is the same. So they sort of, most of them, I guess, stay. So yeah, it's maybe something we can dig into in more detail, because you're right. I'm not sure there is what I should say there is, I'm not sure there is a massive glass ceiling there at this point, but for whatever reason, they're still not breaking through, even though clubs a couple of years before had done that to some degree of success. So yeah, it's an interesting one. But yeah, you're right. They're just there, and they're never in any threat of not getting through, and they're fine till the spring, like you said. But you never really feel like, despite their dominance in the league, they're going to take that next step.
Our old friends Arsenal, with some familiar faces, Dynamo Kiev. I mean, how often have we spoken about Arsenal and Dynamo Kiev in this show? Fenerbahce as well, and Porto in Group G. It's Porto that rose to the top despite being battered 4-0 by Arsenal, and we've talked about this kind of thing. It feels so often. Teams getting absolutely scalped early on and end up winning the group. Arsenal won that game that they went to Turkey and won 5-2. There was also a couple of silly draws as well, perhaps. A defeat in Portugal, but a late Nicholas Bentner goal at home to Kiev to just keep them in the driving seat into that last game. It's all very typically Arsenal, David, but Porto still kicking the ball, still dangerous.
Yep, and it goes to the last game, and they lose it. Over there, they have this ability to take their eye off the ball. It's odd for a side that had such great ball control on the pitch. The amount of times they let the group run under their foot and out for a throw over the years is scary. And in this one, 0-0 draw at home to Fenerbahce, which leaves them chasing. See that Fenerbahce win. This is a side, by the way, they've scudded 5-2 away.
Yeah,
and they draw 0-0 at home. How definitively sort of late period Wenger is this, by the way, the scorers that night? Adebayor, Walcott, Diaby, Song, Ramsey. Even just I say those names, I bet you every single one of them has every single listener has a picture of what those goals looked like, and it's correct, by the way, how you assume. But they do this so often. They're in good positions, pole position, and they chuck in a silly result. Then that leaves them going to, which, by the way, they should still have won. I think they should still, you look at the two teams, you look at the two squads, they should have been able to beat this Porto side. They don't, and they go through in second again. I'm getting fed up saying this, because it's like, the iterations of Arsenal have changed throughout this show and changed throughout this era, and yet the same mistakes they keep doing. Doesn't matter who are in the shirts. Doesn't matter what the ground is. They've had 3 at this stage, their home grounds. They still have this ability to just not, in a way that United and Liverpool do not do, and Chelsea do not do. That Arsenal have got an ability to just drop a stupid result in there that shouldn't take place, shouldn't happen, and make their life difficult for themselves, and they never ever seem to learn from it. But Adam mentioned earlier there, we are right now into, this is a project, this is about how it looks. So long as we're finishing top four, that's success. If you then take into account how beautiful it often is to look at. But you cannot, in the mid-tier, be facing a Turkish side, with no disrespect to that league if you're an English side, in the Champions League, beat them 5-2 away and not beat them at home. You cannot do that. And Arsenal, year after year in the Champions League, it seems to me, would always make life a lot harder for themselves than they had to. And year after year, it caught up with them.
Adam, 2 of your other old pals, Real Madrid and Juve, topping the final group in the season's competition, 12 points apiece. Alessandro Del Piero is still doing things at this level. A quick précis on where both clubs are, and a big spoiler alert, won't be going too far into the depths of this competition this year. Our old friends Zenit St. Petersburg and the aforementioned Bate Borisov pulled up the rest at the bottom there. But yeah, 2 big names, but maybe not quite in great nick.
No, obviously Juventus' issues had been well documented. They are back in the league. They recover fairly well. I think you could say that season that they spend in Serie B, they come back, and then in 2007-2008 they finish 3rd, which is very respectable when you've been that far down. Del Piero, like you mentioned, still smashing it. 24 goals that season, 21 this season. If he wasn't the key player before this, which he was, he absolutely is now. A few other loyal soldiers stay with them. Guys like Buffon, Chiellini, Trezeguet, I think stays with them as well, and Nedved. And fair play. I don't know. Be interesting to see what would have happened if they didn't come back up after one season. I think it's a noble cause at times, and I'm sure contracts etc. would have been fine, but another year and you're starting to get into trouble. So yeah, they're not quite where they were. I think that damage sets them back from being properly elite at this point. But that being said, they still do have some decent players this year. I think you can maybe see even in some of their business as well, they're starting to bring in players that they wouldn't have potentially dreamt of before that. Guys like Olaf Melberg on a free, Alex Manninger, people like that you're just like, okay, this is tightening their belts because of the financial disparities, because of Calciopoli, whatever issues that they've still got here. So yeah, they're very much not where they were, but still maybe it speaks to the paucity of Serie A very, very quickly at this point. Not where they were, but still comfortably second and third in the league. Madrid again, maybe going through this cycle now. They're packed full of Dutch players at this point. They've got Robin in his last season, like I mentioned, Wesley Sneijder, Van der Vaart, guys like that are good and are fine, but it's just one of those things where you let's just bring in all these players that are all this nationality. I can't quite remember from memory. I'm not sure if you guys do, but there didn't really seem like there was a driver there in terms of there wasn't a Dutch manager, for example. I mean, Capello was there for the season, wasn't he? 2006, 2007. But when all these players are coming in, there wasn't really that obvious hook there. But yeah, there's lots of them. Some of them are much better than others. Klaas-Jan Huntelaar probably firmly falling into the latter category. During that, I don't even think he lasted a full season, did he? There, so yeah, maybe they're in this little bit of a transition period as well, and just waiting for a saviour, who may or may not appear in the next couple of years. So yeah, definitely not a banner year for both of them, which is absolutely fine by me.
Real Madrid, like how many teams have we talked about that in this Champions League? Manager disappears in the springtime because Bernd Schuster, former Real Madrid player, I'm sure,
yes,
is doesn't last. You get Wandy Ramos coming in, who'd been sacked by Spurs the season before. It's kind of crazy. Just on the Juve thing and the players kind of kicking about. One who didn't obviously was Cannavaro, who's here. How's his reputation even now for jumping ship?
I think he's more fondly remembered at other clubs. Yeah, I think it's fair to say. But I mean, remember how hot he was in that summer, Martyn, 2006, after the World Cup. He might have been going anyway, but yeah, I
Player
don't.
of the Year, wasn't he?
He was player of the tournament. Was he not the last defender to win the Ballon d'Or? That rings a bell. But he could well have been going anyway. But yes, I think there was a sense of your time and shit, you should stay with us regardless. He was not going to do that. He, Buffon did, Del Piero did. Alex Ferguson spoke about he went for Del Piero that summer. He tried to get him before. I can't. I can't. I don't want to leave anyway, but this summer there's no danger I'm doing it. He's not one now that you hear. Or you go on the Juventus boards. I think they appreciate him more than they revere him. And it's not, let's be honest, that they're short of players in that position to do so. So there is competition there. But I think he would have gone anyway, Martyn, even if they'd been playing in Serie A that year.
Yeah, I think so as well. I think he absolutely would have, probably, because like you said, when you're hot, and Madrid had been after him for a while, the World Cup win, the Ballon d'Or win. I think it would have been time. I can understand the backlash though, because he was the captain, and if there are other players there who have been around for longer than you and more experience and stuff, they're going to have more of an attachment, fair enough. But I think when you're the captain and you're going through that turmoil, Italian fans being as chilled as we know they are, I can imagine the backlash was quite significant. I don't know, maybe was that part of the reason why he went back, albeit very, very briefly, before he finished up. He went back to Madrid for a season. I think after his Juventus contract, was there maybe a little bit of a repayment there in terms of his reputation and things? I'm not so sure, but yeah, I think David called it there. It was a good player, but not going to be a great for them after that.
That's us then, guys. Group stage taken care of. Thank you, David.
Oh, pleasure as always. I love this stuff, and this might be weird, but I love the group stage chats more because there's always teams and guys and things that don't come quite as much out when you get to, because we're in the era now where it's the same lads in the latter stages, so it's nice to talk about some of the more obscure ones.
Indeed. Adam, thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, very much enjoying it.
We'll be back next week, maybe with Rob to discuss the knockouts. We have goals galore. Real Madrid scudded by Liverpool, and Ronaldo starting to score from obscene distances. Lots and lots to come. Until next time, bye for now. If you enjoyed the show and want to help us grow, please remember to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. On YouTube, search for And It's Live Podcast. We've got new deep dives, drafts, and breakdowns dropping every other day.